Hi, my name is James Shepard, and today I want to talk to you about go with the flow when they say no. I'm very proud of myself that I thought of this title, by the way. Do you love that? Isn't that nice? Go with the flow when they say no. Anyway, so I'm really excited to talk to you about this today because I really think it's one of the secrets to my personal sales success. And as I'm talking to salespeople, I'm amazed at the level to which they just don't understand this at all. For some reason, salespeople are insatiably positive, which is good. You need to be positive. You know, when you're out in the field and people are telling you no left and right, you got to have a positive attitude. But that positivity can actually come across as too good to be true. It can come across as scam. It can come across as trying to take advantage of me. And so there is actually a reason why you'd want to go with the flow when somebody says no. And I want to talk to you about in this one and the next video, I'm going to talk about kind of embracing negativity a little bit in your sales presentation. It's going to make a huge difference for you. So here's what we're going to talk about today. So go with the flow when they say no. So what do I mean by this? You walk in, you have a good conversation. Many of you are good salespeople. And a lot of times my prospecting, I'm talking about how to get people to like you and trust you. And you're like, James, what are you talking about? Everybody likes me. Everybody trusts me. I get right into the close. And that's great. But then what happens is they say something like, well, I really need to think about this. Let me think about this a little bit. Come back in a few days and we'll talk more. I need to talk to Susan about this because she's also involved in the decision-making process. So it's them kind of getting on some off-ramp. So I want you to imagine for a second, this actually happened to me recently. I was driving and you've all had this experience. It's so frustrating when you're driving somewhere in Google Maps, if you're driving like a long way away, and Google Maps will come up and say, traffic has increased in your area. You will now arrive 20 minutes later. And you're like, well, what happened? There's an accident, right? So they had an accident and I'm driving along. And so I'm coming up and I'm seeing this, the big red line on Google Maps, which means everybody stopped, right? And so I'm seeing this and I'm like, oh man, there's a 15, 20 minute delay right here because of an accident. Well, as I'm looking at my map, Google Maps says we have an alternate route that'll save you 15 minutes. Do you want to take it? I'm like, yes. I click on it. What was the alternate route? Well, what it did was, if you can imagine, this stop path, it just took me on the off ramp, and I went on the off ramp. It took me down. I did a U-turn. I got back on the on ramp, and between the off ramp and the on ramp, I actually passed by the whole log jam, and I was able to just get around the whole thing. It was awesome. Now in sales, that happens a lot of times. You're coming down that big main highway of sales and driving people towards yes, and you want to get to that destination of yes. But then all of a sudden, they try to get on an off-ramp, don't they? They try to veer off. They put their blinker on. You can just feel the blinker. Oh, I need to talk to Susan because she's involved in the decision. You're like, oh, we're about to go on an off-ramp. Now, there's a couple of things that you could do with this. Number one, you could try to just jam up the off-ramp, put some barriers up there, some big, concrete barriers, and they're going to try to bang their car to get off the off-ramp, but they just can't because you've just stopped them, and you're like, no, look, we need to make a decision today. This is an important decision. It's a good decision for you. I know I'm going to be able to save you money. I'm confident I'm going to be able to do this and this and this. That's that positivity of the sales rep coming through, which can be good in certain applications. In this case, it makes you sound like a pushy, know-nothing sales rep who is not considerate of their feelings and everything. Instead, you can go with the flow when they say no. What you do is this. You just get right in front of them and say, oh, let's go down this off-ramp together and let me lead you to the right location. You get on the off-ramp. How do you get on the off-ramp? What you do is you say something like, well, sure, of course. John, I would never want you to make a decision that you were uncomfortable with or that you hadn't, really made sure was the right decision for you. So let's make sure that we do talk to Susan. Now, as a professional, of course, just like if you went to a lawyer for legal advice and Susan was involved in that proceeding, you and Susan would both want to talk to the lawyer together because the lawyer is the one that has all the legal advice to answer questions and make sure you have an informed decision that you can make. So I'm the same way with the payment processing. I'm an expert in that area, so I definitely want to get together with both you and Susan as the payment processing expert. So when would be a good time, maybe tomorrow or the next day, that I could come back and I could sit down, me, you, Susan, we could all sit down and really talk about this and dig into it a little bit deeper. So if you say something like that, you're just leading them on the off-ramp. They want to get off the off-ramp, go with them, take them, lead them on, right? Now, many of you in sales are like, oh, James, that's crazy. You just lost a sale. No, I didn't. What I did was I guaranteed that I have that callback that I can fall back on if I need to, if it's legitimate. Because if they really do have to talk to Susan, then, they have to talk to Susan. Now what I do is we pull a little U-turn and I'm going to get back on the on-ramp. How do I do that? Just like this. I say, now, John, now that we have that meeting lined up for a Thursday at 2 o'clock, I want to make sure I'm prepared for the meeting. So let me ask you a question. what in your mind are the remaining questions and things that I'm going to need to prepare for to make sure I can answer any concerns that you and Susan have left? What's the primary thing in your mind right now that's keeping you from signing up that we need to talk about to make sure you're making the right decision? Now, what I've done there is now one of two things is going to happen. Either John's going to say something like, really nothing, I like it, I think it sounds really good, I just have to get Susan's okay. Well, now I know he really does have to get Susan's okay. So great. Well, that's great, John. I really appreciate that. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and start getting the paperwork filled out. And then when I come back in here on Thursday, that way I'll make sure I have everything we need to get Susan's okay and get her to approve the paperwork. So now I can get some paperwork done, make sure I'm ready to go. And then when I come back in on Thursday, I can be really assumptive and say, yeah, John was really interested. He told me he's ready to move forward, but we certainly don't want to do anything without you, Susan. I want to make sure I've answered any questions you have. And now I can close the deal. But the other thing that could happen, and it happens many, many times, is that John is now going to give me the real objection. Well, you know, James, it's really just, I thought there was really going to be more savings, to be honest with you. What has he done? He's just opened the on-ramp. Now I realize that Susan really doesn't have to be involved in the decision. It's really about John not believing that the savings is sufficient. Now I can jump right back into the sales process. Well, John, let me ask you a question. I know that we're talking about saving you somewhere in the range of $700, $800 a year. What kind of a return on investment were you looking for to make the right decision? And now I can get that number from, well, I was really hoping to save more like $2,000 a year. Well, let me run some numbers and see what I can do. Oh boy, you know what? I tell you what, John, how about we meet halfway? I can save you $1,300 a year by reducing this fee, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, as long as I can do that for you, are we ready to move forward today and make a commitment now that you are confident the savings is enough to warrant a good decision? You know, now I can say the things I need to say to really get John back on, and I'm back on the road and I'm closing the deal. So go with the flow when they say no. It's not always a good idea when the merchant starts to derail. It's not always a good idea to just block them off and say, no, you're going to buy right now. Let me tell you what, this is the right decision. I'm confident, That's good sometimes, but sometimes you got to go with the flow when they say no. I hope those sales tips have helped you out today. My name is James Shepard. Thanks for watching and listening.